here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Students want to ban the Conservative Party from universities. Environmental activists are gluing themselves to paintings, and Elmo from Sesame Street enters the vaccine debate. This is Free Speech Nation. Nuance is annoying, isn't it? No one likes nuance, it's difficult to spell, and in the culture wars, you have to get rid of it, otherwise you can't have a good time. You take the attribute that's true of the extreme of a group and then pretend that it's true of all of them. Here are some examples. Right-wing people are all racist. Left-wing people are all woke snowflakes. All BMW drivers don't indicate. OK, sometimes that works. But in general, you shouldn't use such broad brushstrokes to judge people. But the trouble is, it feels good. It backs up your own bias, but having no nuance is ruining free speech. We can all agree there are some things, some extremes, that we should curtail. If you want to drive from university to university in some Scooby-Doo style van, saying when you plan to go and beat up a group, we wouldn't allow that. It's against the law, so it should be banned. But you scrap nuance, and the next thing you know, we're banning things because people don't like them. A survey found that 1 in 10 students want to ban a certain group from universities. And what is this group that they wish to shun? A nationalist group, a violent mob? Nope, the group that they want to ban from campuses is the Conservative Party. Now, I'm not saying you have to like the Conservative Party, although they are giving us some great material at the moment. Chris Pincher accused of groping men. The only way that joke would write itself more is if his name was Richard. But you shouldn't want to ban something just because you disagree with it. If you're not willing to listen to the things you disagree with, how do you know what you disagree with? And if you're not willing to take part in the argument, you'll never win it, will you? Now, of course, in my tireless pursuit that's very unpopular to try and achieve fairness, it's not just the left that are trying to cancel things that they don't like. We have the phrase, go woke, go broke, basically saying, oh, if a company signals some virtues that I disagree with, I want to see them go out of business. Now, this week, we've been talking about the Halifax Bank adding pronouns to their badges, and then we saw reports of people suggesting a boycott. I mean, it is a name badge. It includes people's names that we also don't read and use. You tend to ignore them. In fact, I'll go a step further. If you use people's name badges, it looks weird. If you walk up to someone and say, hello, I'd like to make a deposit, Sarah, Sarah is going to call the manager. Now, if a corporation's making a big deal about how inclusive they are, it's worth remembering they're only doing it to impress you so they can get to more of your sweet, sweet money. Let's not pretend that corporations are genuinely huggy-feely these days, but if one of them does something you don't like, do you have to wish bankruptcy on them? Back to universities. The survey said that 39% of students say that students' unions should ban speakers who offend some students. It's unworkable. Mathematically, how many students does it take to mean some? Because you can always find someone who doesn't like something. I once saw a video on YouTube of 6 hours of beautiful whale song, and someone had given it a thumbs down. Imagine going through life as that person. Oh, I don't like that whale. Ugh. Someone didn't like it. Should we take it down? Many people thought that Galileo was offending their religious sensibilities. Would we be better off if we'd protected offence above all else? Giving the most power to the most easily offended creates a race to the bottom. The left is offended by anything that's slightly right-wing, so the right wing gets offended with anything that the left are doing. The proportion of students that think that academics should be fired if they teach material that offends some students is 36%. So what if someone is offended by the idea of firing an academic over something like this? Stalemate. We'll never get anything done. But if we add nuance back in, we see that not everything you disagree with is hate crime or oppression. Just because you don't like something doesn't mean you should try and banish it from your life. So, in conclusion, if you listen to different points of view, if you allow a range of opinions to exist, and if you hear what people have to say, don't worry. It doesn't mean you'll change your mind. You can still be the same bias-filled, small-minded person you've always wanted to be. And if you didn't like that conclusion, good. It's a step in the right direction. Now, my studio guests this evening are comedians Leo Kearse and Nick Dixon. Who seem to both have recently had laser eye surgery. Is there a reason you're looking so cool?
We just thought it would be funny to do it for no reason, but I don't know if it was that funny.
Yeah, now we're realising it was a terrible idea.
I can't see it.
Committed now.
You realise that it's actually not Andrew this week? Because you could barely see a thing. Hey, it's Steve again.
Oh, it's Steve.
The shine of my head can get through most sunglasses. Let's not pretend it. So, you had a good week so far?
It's been great, mate. How was yours?
It's been pretty. I get to do this. I'm loving this.
Yeah.
I get to actually talk about free speech and stuff. Sweet.
But are you, because I've never seen you as a free speech champion.
Oh, because he's part of the woke left.
No, but that was exactly the point of the monologue, is that I think free speech should be an attribute of both sides. But we're almost starting to think, in fact, both sides think the other one doesn't like it enough.
Steve, why is it your side has destroyed free speech?
Yeah.
It's exactly the bias I'm talking about. Yeah, well done. So, let's crack on. We have some questions from the audience to get our teeth into. And our first question comes from Chanda.
Is it possible to go out on the town nowadays without being accosted by a Tory MP?
Well, this all comes down to the story of, I'm presuming, we're talking about, presumably, reference to Chris Pincher, who made headlines or two this week. Pincher resigned as Deputy Chief Whip on Thursday after allegedly groping two men when drunk at a club. He subsequently had the whip withdrawn, which is always a phrase that sits uncomfortably with me. And further allegations emerged in the papers. So, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, so basically, Chris Pincher, he's a mate of Boris's, so Boris just lets him get away with murder. Like, not literally, it's not quite Putin level where he would be getting away with murder, but he's certainly getting away with putting his hands in a lot of places where he shouldn't put his hands. So the previous allegations, and in fact, he was investigated before after groping a former Olympic rower, I think, by massaging his neck and shoulders and saying, "Ooh, you'll go far in the Conservative Party," which actually is even more disgusting than Harvey Weinstein's MO.
I heard it was his knee. We don't want to get sued here, Leo. I heard that he touched his knee and said, "You'll go far in the party."
I think he worked his way up and down his body.
So far, he's got half of head, shoulders, knees and toes. So he's covering the main points.
Like you say, it is. We covered a story yesterday. It is not ideal that his name is Pincher. I don't know what the odds of that were. I mean, the only way it could be worse if his name was Chris, yes, I touched those two boys. You know what I mean? Like a sort of double-barreled thing. But the other thing, I mean, look, but let's give some balance. He hasn't actually been convicted. We do have to have innocent until proven guilty. It doesn't sound great, I admit. Like, I'm not advocating groping. I've never groped anyone. I've been groped. Leo's apologised. Apparently, he said he was on meth, and I've let him off. But let's be honest, we do have this thing where we judge people now immediately before any actual evidence.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's fun and it's great because this sort of thing it seems to be the only thing where you can prejudge someone before there's been any sort of investigation or court case. So me too. Believe all women and all young MPs that are in a bar where Chris Pincher is as well. So, yeah,
But couldn't I just say, Leo groped me on headliners underneath the table, and then they'd look at you, you're taller than me, they'd say, you're sort of a bit of a bully. They'd say, yeah, he probably did. You know what I mean? And then you'd be in trouble.
Bit of a bully.
And it would stick to you. That would stick to you then, Leo, forever, even if the evidence then came out.
Why are you talking about things sticking to me?
Yeah, but through the rules of nominative determinism, like, he's not called Pincher, so I don't believe it. If you had the surname of, Handful, then, that they wouldn't let you on the other side of that desk.
Yeah. I mean, he's got an unfortunate name, but also apparently he's got a drink problem. Not that I've been, going through his bins or anything, but he's got a drink problem. And you'd think right now, so this is a government mired in sleaze, and Boris looks quite shaky at the top. Because of sleaze, because we've had Owen Patterson, there's been so many scandals just dragging down Neil Parish. We just had 2 by-elections. And understand, Boris might be trying to skirt round this issue and sweep it under the carpet just so he doesn't have to have another embarrassing by-election, which he'll lose. But you'd think, like, Chris Pincher, wouldn't you just leave the groping until just wait a month?
But couldn't this be the ultimate distraction? But like another dead cat for Boris. He's got so many worse stories. Couldn't he use this one to distract from, the war, by-elections, Partygate, everything?
Well, the war is the only...
Oh, no, the war's a good thing for him, sorry, because Ukraine is
well for him.
Yeah, you're right.
Deploy the pincher. Do you think that gets said? But isn't part of the issue here not necessarily just about Pincher? It's more the accusations that Boris knew and yet still promoted him. Is there, or should there be, a requirement for someone in that position to maybe do a little bit of due diligence, to check on these rumours before you promote someone?
Yeah, I mean, this is breaking centuries of parliamentary obligation to never promote anybody who's done anything dodgy. No, this is completely... This is what politics is. So Chris Pincher had spearheaded the movement to sort of preserve Boris's job. So Boris had to pay him back. And we've seen, Boris has people close to him that then become enemies. I don't think he needs another Dominic Cummings out there tweeting his opinion about everything that Boris does.
I've just realised Pincher sounds like an instruction, but he got it wrong. he went exclusively for men, so he got it wrong in that way. But anyway, he has had medical treatment for his mental health. So I do want to say, let's not attack him too much, because, poor Chris Pincher, that's what I'm saying.
People always pull out the mental health thing. As soon as they get accused of anything, they're like, "Oh, I'm dealing with mental health issues, and I'm getting some treatment for my voracious groping."
Yeah, it's a good tactic.
It's not listed in the psychiatric disorders as I drink 3 bottles of sherry and then grab people by the buttocks. That is not a psychiatric disorder.
Might be a kind of Tourette's, like a touching-based version.
Could be. Is the treatment for a groping condition just wearing mittens?
With a string in the middle,
Yeah,
so you can only get one hand on a person at the time.
I'm sensing we've almost done too much on this groping bit. If I could sense for the audience, they're like, well, any more groping jokes, lads? No, I think that's like...
Yeah, any more groping jokes, though, seriously, before? OK, we'll move on then. Our next question is from Bharat.
Yes. Why can't my child wear shorts in the school?
Why can't my child wear shorts to school? This is Wyndham High Academy in Norfolk that was in the news for bringing in new gender-neutral uniform policies, and this is that male pupils complained about the hot weather, uncomfortable in trousers during the hot summer months, and so, how do you solve that? You say that they can wear skirts instead of letting everyone wear shorts. Interesting way of looking at it. Nick, is that the solution you go for?
Not for me, obviously. I'm against all this kind of thing. I mean...
just this kind of thing.
This type of thing. Any change, no thank you. What's really odd is that we had to wear shorts as children, weren't allowed. We had to, at junior school, we were only allowed to wear shorts in all weathers in the far north. But bizarrely, with a tie, it's like, when does that come up in adult life, that combination? Like, you know what I mean, shorts and a tie? Maybe you're playing a football match with the Queen. Like, it's an incredibly rare mix of...
You could be an Australian postman.
I didn't get that, but thanks for interrupting me with that. I didn't get it, but... Oh, yeah, because it's so hot, but you're formal. Yeah, I mean, but the thing about this is that they're not going to allow the boys... If it's really hot, let the boys wear shorts, right? But don't let them wear skirts under any circumstances. And women should be allowed to wear skirts, but ideally, girls shouldn't be at school at all, because then they get an education and they get ideas. I said on Twitter, who's going to say the most appalling things between me and Leo? And all of Twitter said Leo will win, so I'm trying to fight back and win.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not quite at the introduce the Taliban to run our education level.
You're totally woke, Leo. Where did you get so woke? I'm based.
Surely the solution is everyone should wear anything.
Well, the solution to Bharat's question is your son can't wear shorts at school because he's 37.
Yeah.
That court order.
And someone just handed you that piece of paper. You don't even have a son. You just had it. They said, read this out.
I have a son and I have a grandson as well.
Oh, you do? OK.
He goes to school.
Now, does your grandson wear shorts?
I don't mind.
You don't mind?
I don't mind it.
It's not up to you.
It's not you in charge of the policy. Yeah. Is he allowed to wear a skirt to school?
No.
Nah.
Definitely not.
You wait.
I won't let him do that. I will
Give it a week, you can't stop him.
I'll stop wearing the
Well,
skirts.
don't tell us how you're going to stop, because I think...
Only the shorts, only the shorts,
OK.
yeah.
Let's, unbelievably, to make sure we don't say anything offensive now, I'm going to turn back to the guest. I never thought that would happen. You know, Leo, what do you think the solution would be, though?
Let them wear shorts. Since when have shorts been illegal for schoolboys to wear? I grew up associating shorts with schoolboys, not in a strange way, but
Not in a pinch way.
Look at the most famous schoolboy in the world, Angus Young from AC/DC.
Oh yeah,
he wears shorts. He's famously a schoolboy, 87 years old.
But Leo, should the boys be wearing skirts?
Well, funnily enough, last year or the year before, a class of boys did do that. They wore skirts to get around the ban, which at the time seemed a hilarious thumbing their nose at authority type gesture. Now it's just in line with the authorities wanting everyone to transition.
Right.
So
it's not even banter anymore. It's just like,
yeah.
It's like we're all wearing skirts. Like, yes, thank you for representing.
That is what they wanted everybody to do.
Let's move on to the next question now, and this one is from Mary.
Hi. Are rappers worth a trade war?
A rapper's worth a trade war.
Oh.
So this is about former President Donald Trump, who apparently threatened Sweden with a trade war in an attempt to secure the release of US rapper detained in Stockholm on assault charges, according to the Nordic country's justice minister. This is rapper A$AP Rocky, and you can tell I'm clearly aware of the work, given that I had to ask if you pronounce it $AP. You don't. So what? I mean, apparently this is some sort of... It turned into quite the almost diplomatic issue about a rapper being arrested. Leo, should this have gone this way? Is it worth refusing to buy IKEA goods to really send a message?
I don't know, but I miss Trump. I miss stuff like this being, you know, what the US president is in the news for, instead of falling off a bike and needing a note written on a bit of paper to know when to sit down. It makes Trump look incredibly compos mentis and up to the job. But yeah, a trade war with Sweden. I think America should go into a trade war with Sweden, because what are they getting from Sweden? Like some ABBA records and a Volvo? Like we've got other sources of furniture. Just do it.
But if there's a trade war with Sweden, that means you're right. You don't get the new ABBA show. I mean, would that impact your life, Nick?
Well, the genius of Trump is that they believe he would do it. This is famously the thing with Russia. This is why there was no war with Russia when Trump was in, because they thought he might... He said he'd bomb Moscow, and Putin's going, he might do it. I don't know. You know? And with this, what you've got to realise with Trump, I'm sure you know, Trump's style is New York gangster. So when he was dealing with a terrorist, can't remember if it was ISIS or another one, but he showed them a picture of their house. And he went, there you go, mate, know where you live. Do you know what I mean? And that tends to discourage people from doing terrorism when you're showing them a picture of the house. And so that's what he's like. So what he did with Sweden, he just said, we'll do a trade war, which is quite moderate for Trump, really. He didn't show anyone's house. But on a boring, serious level, the mistake is Trump trying to do these things to be liked by the left. He's like, oh, let's help a rapper out or something. But it never worked because the left hate him anyway. Like, Trump actually had really good prison reform policy that really helped out African-Americans in America. So good was his policy that Van Jones, a Democrat, that had been his main issue. He said, Trump's policy is so good, it's made me obsolete. But the left still will never give him any credit, so there's no point. Like, Kanye liked Trump, and you think, oh, cool, Trump's in with rappers and stuff. Then the left just said, yeah, well, Kanye's mentally ill. So you can't win. So I think this is Trump trying to do one of these token gestures to be like, hey, look at me, I help out rappers.
Yeah. Is the flip side of that whilst he may have had policies the left should have liked, he also did so well by thumbing his nose at the left, by making part of his deal hating things, or at least joining in with the crowd that might have hated the left?
Well, yes, the Trump derangement syndrome that he perhaps caused made it very hard for people to rationally see any of the good policies he actually had. But whose fault is that? A bit of both. So
this is as close as I've ever witnessed you saying Trump might have done something a bit wrong. I'll take that and move on. You never know. But so is this the way to resolve all these issues?
That's because I'm going DeSantis 2024. Anyway, carry on.
Well, I think in this specific issue, because there's no point in rappers going to jail anymore, because you used to, you know, have rappers go to jail and then they'd record that album that was recorded over the phone from jail, and it had that atmospheric crackling. And now with digital communications, you don't get that. So they might as well be out.
Is that the same reason that that we shouldn't have had Jeffrey Archer in prison?
Yes.
Yeah, somehow it is. Our next question is from Emma.
Will gluing myself to the Mona Lisa end climate change?
So this, I presume, is about environmental activists glued themselves to a painting at Kelvin Grove Art Gallery and Museum in Glasgow yesterday. Members of the group Just Stop Oil also spray painted their logo on walls and floors in the museum. The protesters say that they're calling for the government to end new oil and gas extraction, which, of course, the local art gallery has all the power to change. So, Leo, is this how you would solve the problems? Did I do Leo twice in a row?
Yeah, but it's fine. It's fine.
I'm trying to keep them fair, Nick.
It's fine.
They'll go to Nick. He'll kick off.
Nick, when was the last time you glued yourself to something?
Last night. I went to A&E. I went to A&E. The NHS gets criticised. They
Did
were
they get
very
the laptop off your fingers?
No, thank you. Look.
Bet you're glad I asked now, aren't you?
Yeah. I'm regretting this, but. The young people gluing themselves to paintings, it's as if they don't understand the complexities of geopolitics, I'm starting to think. Because we clearly see from the war, we need to have energy independence, and that the war has made it even more clear that we can't be beholden to Russia for our energy. Someone needs to tell these young people that, because they're just gluing themselves to stuff. And if you notice, some of them are probably brainwashed, and it's quite sad because they really think the world's ending if they don't glue themselves to a Van Gogh painting, which is absolutely mental. But there's also just an element of narcissism. They tend to... I don't want to single out anyone, but the young lady who did this most recently was called Hannah Torrance Bright. They always seem to have at least 3 or 4 names. Have you noticed? They tend to be, let's be honest, young, posh people who have got a bit obsessed with climate and might need to look at things in a bit more of a nuanced way, like we don't want to be dependent on Putin, so we may need to develop other forms of energy.
Now, one of them, I looked at some of the pictures, and one of them had the foresight to bring one of those fold-out chairs.
Yeah.
So they're not all stupid. If you're going to glue yourself to something, have a sit down. The one stood next to us like, I knew I should have bought that.
Yeah, and that fold-out chair was made out of plastic, which is made from oil. The hypocrisy of these people is insane. You know, how do you think they got to the art gallery? Did they ride a Clydesdale horse? And why protest at an art gallery in the first place? Well, in case some, oil baron, some oligarch is wandering through Kelvin Grove and decides to go and look at some watercolours. It's an absolute nonsense.
And that was quite interesting. It was an art gallery because the young lady said, "I'm an art student." I'm thinking, we could have guessed.
Maybe it's because all the little signs say oil on canvas. Oh no, this is making it worse. This is exactly what they're against. But is it, just to ruin the fun, isn't the serious issue that if you can rationalise doing a crime because the cause is so important, where do you stop the crime that you can rationalise? Because then the next thing is, well, I'm trying to save the planet, so I can get away with all of the bad things I want to do.
Yeah, and the tragedy is that they're not saving the planet. They're actually, because of green policy in this country and across Europe and across the Western world, we've left ourselves completely dependent on Putin for oil and gas, which means that, now there's environmental devastation, in Ukraine caused by loads of artillery shells and unexploded landmines, which aren't good for pandas or any other kind of wild animal. So the people who are trying to make the world a better place, I don't think anybody's ever tried to make the world a better place and actually made it a better place. I think the only way to make the world a better place is to mind your own business.
Very good. And you're right, no one thinks of the pandas in war, do they?
Yeah.
Are you telling me we might not have any more Ukrainian pandas after this? Oh, no, not the...
Because of their marking, they show up very well on night vision goggles. So...
Their own stupid fault then, isn't it? Fair enough. Well, after the break on Free Speech Nation, showbiz journalist Paula London tells us why she thinks the Toy Story spin-off film has flopped at the box office.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GBNews.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back. So, moviegoers may have heard that Pixar's new Lightyear movie bombed at the box office this month, one of the legendary studio Hollywood failures. Tim Allen, who voiced the original Buzz Lightyear, believes it's due to the film's lack of connection to the originals, but others feel it's the old adage, go woke, go broke. Well, with me to talk about this is showbiz journalist and commentator Paula London. So, firstly, have you seen the film?
Of course, I watched it yesterday.
And what's the take on it? Is it a go woke, go broke problem?
It is. It was just awful. I feel like it bombed for a lot of reasons. Firstly, Tim Allen is synonymous with Buzz, so he wasn't in it, obviously. There's a lot of rumours going around that he wasn't in it because he's a Republican. He supports Trump. And Disney are obviously very left, very democratic. So that annoyed a lot of American people, so they didn't go to see the movie. Also, lesbian kiss. I watched it. It was a peck. It really wasn't anything to be worried about, whether you're a child or an adult. But
is it bigger or less than a Brookside?
Oh, it was like that. Like 1 second, you would have missed it. So that wasn't a concern, but there's a lot of reasons why, you know, it bombed. I just think Disney have forgotten who their target audience are. Their target market are children between the ages of 4 and 12. And they're trying to cater to the 5% minority, and they're just forgetting other people. They're annoying Americans right, left and centre, and they're their biggest audience. Yeah.
Are we falling for the problem of thinking that their target audience like 5-year-olds, but the 5-year-olds who watched the original Toy Story are now probably 60 and own loads of houses? You know, like, we all grow up. They're probably actually nearly... they're in their 30s or something. When was the original?
Well, a lot of these people now have children, and what Disney have done now, they've waded into politics now. They got concerned in Florida. A new law just passed last week, July the 1st, an education bill, which is preventing teachers from teaching children about LGBTQIA.
LGBTQIA.
Well, there's actually K. There's K on the end, but K means kink. So
I think we get the point. And as much as I'd watch this turn into an episode of Countdown,
I thought I memorised that, but it's long now.
I think we get the point. But I suppose the question would be, do they mention any of that in this film? Is this people not liking the brand or not liking the film?
Well, basically, there's a new series now, Baymax, on Disney Plus, a Disney series, and they have a trans character now. I'm all for LGBTQ rights, 100%. I had a great time at Pride, but I also think children need to be children. You know, there's plenty of time to educate children about, you know, your gender and your sex can be different, but children need entertaining. They want to go and see a Disney movie. They don't need parents explaining, oh, that man was born a man, but now he identifies as a female. They don't need to have those conversations with 4 and 5-year-olds.
So does any of that happen in Lightyear?
Lightyear, no. But there is the lesbian kiss, and it's almost like Buzz should aspire to this type of relationship.
Right.
I think the best thing about the movie was the cat socks. I mean, I'm not even a cat person, I'm a dog person, but I found the cat very funny. But the movie was boring, and people are annoyed with Disney, so I think that's one of the reasons they didn't go to see it.
As much as I don't mind heading towards a controversial debate, let's not start our dogs or cats better. We'll never
I love my cat.
live.
Oh, my dog, rather, sorry.
See?
Yeah. No, I have a dog.
This happens.
Naughty dog.
You mentioned Baymax. I must admit, I apologise for this, not up on the latest children's animations because I don't spend my time watching these things. So what happens in Baymax?
Well, it's a new series. It's the 6th series, I believe, and some of the footage was leaked. And one of the top presidents of Disney actually has a pansexual child and a transgender child. And she said she wants more and more and more LGBTQIA characters. And so about 50% that they want. And I think, you know, the population is around 10% identify, you know, as LGBTQIA, and I don't see why 50% really have to be.
So what are you saying? 50% of what need?
They want 50% of people to be LGBTQIA.
In their output or in real life?
In real life, it's around 10%, but they want 50% in the Disney
And
shows.
being
And
represented.
people of colour as well, but they mainly want someone from each section of LGBTQIA. She just said they want to queer up Disney as much as they can. That's what people are saying now at Disney.
So the argument that there should be the issue of representation, some representation.
Oh, I definitely want some representation. We need that. But I don't see why it has to be much more than the general public.
And then, so it's easy to then look at the poor box office takings for this film and then think, we know why. I suppose it's difficult to actually work out whether we're dealing with this causation or a different causation. Is it caused by the wokeness of Disney, or is it just, you know what, no, there are some films that no one needs a prequel to?
Go woke, broke, broke. It's the saying, you know, Disney,
Yeah,
they've got to
make it
go broke.
terrible.
But their sales, their shares have gone down 40% in 6 months. That's a lot. Even though there is a war in Ukraine, that's a lot. Once the box office has spoken, the movie cost 200 million. They've taken 150 million, but they also spent 100 million on marketing. It's been banned in 14 countries, and it looks like China is going to ban it as well. So they can pat themselves in the back in the office, all the lefties, the Democrats, but they're not making money. And it's a business, it's not a charity. Disney is a business, so they need to make money.
China does like banning films, though. I mean, Winnie the Pooh films have been banned in China.
Well, 14 other countries have banned it, so it will be 15.
Well,
so that's not very clever, is it, really, to make a movie that it's banned in 15 countries?
Let's just straw poll it then. Anyone here seen it? OK. I mean, that's quite telling. Then again, none of you are 5-year-olds, so maybe it's difficult to know which way around the problem is. Would you never see it because it's Disney? No. Okay. You would see it?
It's very boring. The cinema's quite expensive these days as well, so if you're going to take your kids and the movie's not that good... Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not giving away tickets before people get too excited.
No. I saw Elvis last week. That's really good. I really recommend that. That's
Any
really
lesbian
good.
kisses in it?
No.
Well, then
no.
why would I go? So, are Disney ever going to learn the lesson? Because, look, this is what I was saying at the start of the show, that actually for a lot of these corporations that have their virtues up front and centre, it's worth remembering that the entity is there to make money.
Exactly.
And not just that should be their goal, but if ever there's a corporation that's boasting about how inclusive it is, I always think they're trying to hug you so they can get their hand in your pocket.
But it's like TV shows. So many TV shows pat themselves on the back in the UK for being so woke, but then they're not making money because you need to have adverts. That's how TV stations make money. So what is the point of like, oh, we're being so woke, well done to us, when the show's not making any money, they'll be out of a job. So
from
shouldn't
now
really
on,
be that happy.
Would you ever watch any other Disney films?
No, not really. Disney's changed. When I was a little girl, I loved Sleeping Beauty. Even musicals have changed. Cinderella changed. It was completely different to the story that I knew and loved.
But isn't that the nature of change, that maybe things might be different for 5-year-olds? Because I'm quite not 5 anymore. It's been a long while since that.
Some things don't need to change. Why change a great story of Cinderella? It was changed to musicals. You don't need to change. Children are having a hard time. They want to go to watch a movie, watch Disney. Parents need to be able to leave them alone and not worry, oh, my God, what are they seeing? What are they going to ask me? Or, like, Mummy, I'm wearing shorts. Does that mean I'm trans now? Like, things like that. It's scary.
Turns out, if they go to the right school in Norfolk, they could wear a skirt.
Wow.
Paula, thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
And after the break on Free Speech Nation, Stop Brexit Man has returned to Westminster. Toby Young joins me to discuss the latest.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely. absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you. We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back. Later in the show, I'll be turning agony uncle with the help of my panel, Leo Kearse and Nick Dixon, to help deal with your unfiltered dilemmas. And if they can help, you really must have some problems. You can email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk and we will try to answer your issues. Now, anti-Brexit activist Steve Bray has returned to Westminster despite facing prosecution under new anti-protest laws. The Police, Crime, Sentencing and Courts Act, which came into force on Tuesday, introduces an offence of intentionally or recklessly causing public nuisance in an attempt to crack down on disruptive guerrilla protests of the kind used by climate crisis activists. Bray is known for his musical protests outside the House of Commons, but police tried to shut him down when the new laws came into effect. I'm joined now by Toby Young from the Free Speech Union. Thank you for joining us, Toby. Ordinarily, we would be probably sitting here having a chat about him being an annoying Ramona, but this is a freedom of speech issue. Should he be allowed to do that protest?
Yeah, I think it's a slightly tricky one. At the Free Speech Union, we have a rule whereby we won't defend people if their right to free speech is curtailed, if they're trying to exercise that right to curtail the rights of others to exercise their right to free speech. It looks as though Steve Bray, on occasion, is using intimidation, in-your-face harassment in order to try and shut down the speech of his opponents. He goes up to well-known Brexiteers with his loudspeaker and shouts in their faces in an unpleasant and intimidating way. He plays very loud music. So the question really, for me, is he using his right to free speech to try and stop others using theirs? And if he is, I don't think I could defend him. I think the solution here is to say, look, provided you keep the volume reasonable, provided you don't use electronic amplification or a loudspeaker, and provided you're in the designated area, then of course I would defend your right to exercise free speech, to protest outside Parliament. But if you're going to go outside those areas, follow people down the street, get in their faces, play really loud, amplified, anti-Boris music, then I think you've crossed a line.
I'm not sure what anti-Boris music is, but I'm surprising it's not doing better in the charts. But I know, I take the point.
I'll tell you what it is.
The same way of asking the same question would be, surely if he was actually harassing people, harassment was already illegal. But this new law that comes in is, well, people have debated on this very channel about whether there are some freedoms that are being curtailed by this idea of a noisy protest. Are we no longer allowed to protest noisily if that's the biggest crime that he's doing?
Well, I think, as I understand it, the new prohibition on noisy protests, which on the face of it does sound draconian, only applies to individuals. So a crowd of protesters can be noisy. There's no prohibition on that. I think if individuals want to be noisy in a way that causes a public nuisance as part of a protest. And Steve Bray, I think, does fall into that category, which is why this new prohibition has been applied to him. I mean, I think it is a tricky one, but I think, he clearly doesn't want to act reasonably. He's not willing to negotiate with the police. I think they've said to him, if you just turn down the music a little bit, and by anti-Boris music, I didn't mean to single that out as music which should be prohibited under this new law. He plays an adaptation of the Bay City Rollers song, Bye Bye Baby, whereby the lyrics are Bye Bye Boris, but incredibly loudly outside, the Treasury building. I mean, if you work in there, it must be intensely annoying to hear it day after day after day. And you get the impression that, the reason he isn't being reasonable, the reason he isn't kind of just adapting his protest a little bit so he can continue to protest is because he wants to be a martyr to the anti-Brexit cause. He wants to be banged up. I think you can be jailed for 6 months under this new law. And I think he wants nothing more than to be sent to prison so he can become, the Brexit one. And people will protest outside the prison to free him and God knows what. I mean, I think, I do think that people should certainly have the right to protest, particularly outside Parliament, particularly, in large groups. And if individuals want to protest, they should be welcome to do it too, and we should defend their right to do that. But if they do it in such an irksome, noisy, deliberately unpleasant way, over a really long period of time, and if they're belligerent and aggressive when anyone tries to reason with them, then I think, it's harder to have much sympathy for them.
That is quite a big megaphone we can see on screen right now. So at least you could probably ban the length of a megaphone that big. But so I think it might be unfair to ask the question this way, but I'm going to do it anyway. So you, Toby Young, from the Free Speech Union, it sounds like you like the new rules that have been brought in.
I don't like the new rules that have been brought in, but I don't think I think people have been exaggerating the extent to which they curtail free speech. I do think that sometimes individuals being extremely noisy with a view to disrupting people's working lives, making it difficult for them to go in and out of their offices. I mean, no matter how worthy the cause, do we think, would we die in a ditch to defend their right to be, a nuisance over a long period of time using an enormous megaphone or a massive amplifier in order to kind of shout at people and try and shut them up because you believe so passionately in your cause?
Would we die in a ditch to let people play the Bay City Rollers? All very good questions. Toby, thank you very much. Toby Young from the Free Speech Union. Let's move on now to the next part of the show, which is called Devil's Advocate, where our panellists discuss one of the burning issues of the day. And this week, our panel are talking about whether working class people should be banned from the opera. Now, this comes after Labour's Deputy Leader Angela Rayner was criticised this week in the House of Commons by Dominic Raab after attending Glyndonbourne. I guess it's pronounced that way. I wouldn't know, as I'm working class. Clyde and Boyne, you see, we've got some posh people in. Thank heavens. So, first, arguing that working class people should be banned, we have Leo Kearse.
Yeah.
You've already won.
Yeah, I'm glad you applauded before. I don't think you're going to applaud after. But, the opera is nice. It gives a chance, when Angela Rayner goes to the opera, it gives us a chance to see how working class people are succeeding so much under the Tory government. She can afford to spend, what is it like? It's like £63 for a ticket to the opera. No wonder working class people are poor, if that's how they're spending their money. No wonder food bank usage is shooting up. No, I think working class people shouldn't go to the opera because they don't understand. It's not something to be enjoyed. It is punishment for rich people. It's the penance rich people pay for success. I went to the opera once. I genuinely made that mistake. I went to the opera. And the worst thing about it was, it was all boring and it went on for ages. There weren't any, robots or car chases or anything like that. And it was just literally people on a stage. I'm not even joking. It was just people on a stage singing and stuff. And the worst thing about it was they weren't even singing in like Italian or Spanish or German or some romantic language. They were singing in English, so I could hear everything they were saying. And it wasn't when it's in Italian, you think, oh, this must be some great love sonnet or something. And I was like, no, it's just a guy saying. They're just saying this stuff, the narrative stuff that's happening in the opera. There's like, fetch me my ladder, bring me my ladder. I need the ladder to climb on top of the shed, and like super boring stuff. It was rubbish, and working class people shouldn't expose themselves to that kind of idiocy, particularly considering the worst thing about opera is it's subsidised by the Arts Council and the lottery, because nobody wants to go and see it, so it has to get lots of investment. You don't get that in comedy. You come and see me performing at a comedy club, there's no lottery money going to that comedy club. And I think this is disgusting because Arts Council money comes from taxpayers, so that's all you people in the audience. It could be anybody, a bus driver, whoever, is paying money from his pay packet to some posh Esmeraldas to prance about on stage singing. And it's an absolute nonsense. Again, the lottery is a tax on the poor and desperate. You're scratching off hoping you're going to get rich. No, you're just paying for some fat guy to sing. So yeah, we need to stop it. Just ban the opera altogether.
All right, Leah, can I just check? You said you went to see an opera that involved singing about a ladder. Did you go and see the musical Fiddler on the Roof? It feels like...
Also known as the Prince Andrew story. But,
I'll probably have to apologise for that joke later, I'll get told, don't I? Beautiful. Oh, you've made your case well. Now arguing that they shouldn't be banned, Nick Dixon.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah. Well, I was hoping to go first before Leo because I knew Leo's rant would be longer than most operas, but I've used notes. He's written on his hand in a very working class way, but I'm going to say working class people shouldn't be banned from the opera, just Labour politicians. And, of course, those are two completely separate categories because, look, it's bad optics. If the principal criticism of your party is that it's lost touch with the working class, then it's not ideal during a rail strike to bugger off to the opera and quaff champagne. And notice champagne can only be quaffed. Have you noticed that? It's always quaffed. You can't neck champagne. That's how you can tell it's not working class. Labour politicians should only drink drinks you can neck, like WKD that Leo drinks. But anyway, the point is, so you're out there quaffing champagne when you should be, Angela Rayner, looking out for the poor train workers who are only getting around 70 grand a year to pull a lever when they should be making more like 76. OK, it's disgusting. And unless some booze. Unless the opera, of course, is about rail strikes, which could be a kind of get-around. And I noticed Angela Rayner tried to do that. She tried to say, well, I was at an opera that was about the working class. It's like, yeah, but it was still a posh, fat woman singing, wasn't it? Let's be honest. So I'm assuming, because I've never actually been to the opera because I'm too working class, I'm from a northern state school, so if I go to the opera, to this day, someone from the school will come along and give me a dead arm. It's part of the network. So that's all I really had. The working class, yeah, I know. It was patchy. Don't know why I even bothered writing it down. But
it looked like there's more because you got 2 bits of paper there.
No, that's other stuff. That's just roasts about you.
All right.
Call him tall and too woke. That's my case anyway. No, they shouldn't be whatever I said.
I have genuinely been told in my ear that I should make an apology for the Prince Andrew joke. I have to say the word allegedly. It is only alleged that he plays the violin, I guess is what I have to say about that.
And I would like to say I've enjoyed working with Leo at GBNews, and this will be his last appearance. But, great guy. Sad to see him go.
Well, that topic thoroughly well debated. Coming up on Free Speech Nation, an exclusive clip from Andrew Doyle's podcast this week. He's been speaking with former long-distance athlete Maro Yamuchi. In terms of who won the Devil's Advocate, do we put that to the audience vote? Do you think it was Nick? Oh. I'd say it goes to Leo.
All the ones I win, they never ask the crowd. Then one of them I do that's a bit rubbish, and then they ask the crowd. Why is there a conspiracy against me?
You got one?
No, he gave it to Leo.
Oh, OK, sorry. Makes it worse. Right, we'll see you after this.
It's his last appearance, anyway.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely. absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you. We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Our regular host, Andrew Doyle, has been talking to Mara Yamuchi for an upcoming episode of his podcast. The former long-distance runner spoke to Andrew about her upcoming book.
10 years since your last Olympic appearance, so why did you decide to write this book at this time?
So I've had it as an idea for about 10 years, actually. I wanted to get something down about my running career, but pressure of other work meant I never could find the time to really concentrate on it. And then COVID came along and a lot of my work was cancelled. And that was a great opportunity for me to really knuckle down and write it. And two reasons, really. One is I want to help other people to run faster, enjoy their running, but also to make the best of any non-running project they have going on in their lives. The market basically is runners, but also other people taking on big projects. And also I wanted to record for myself for the future something about my career before it's too late and I've forgotten about it.
So I suppose part memoir, part advice to aspiring athletes, is that right?
Yes.
Maybe talk to us a bit about the structure of the book and what you've done there.
So it's 42.195 insights on running and life, and 42.195 is the number of kilometres in a marathon. So they're little nuggets of wisdom, which I learned through being an elite athlete. So it's advice, but also I really want my readers to think critically and almost sort of be their own coaches, because so much of what's out there at the moment about information about running is kind of spoon feeding you of what to do, training plans and stuff. And I think what you really need to do is think for yourself, how do I train better to run faster? So it's encouraging my readers to think for themselves, and it's the nuggets of wisdom that I learned.
It feels like it's that combination of obviously physical prowess, but also psychological preparedness. You know, I mean, it must be it must be an incredible feeling to have reached the top, to be one of the very best in the world. I mean, what kind of discipline does it require, and do you have to be born with that kind of innate aptitude, or is it something that you can work towards?
I think there is an element of having the right character for it. The marathon is a very long event, obviously, so a lot of the training has to be very long. It can be quite lonely. You have to have that patience and determination to do all the training. But the nuts and bolts of it can be learned, for sure. There's really nothing complicated about it.
Did you always know that you wanted to be an athlete professionally?
At age 11, I had a dream to become an elite athlete, having watched the 1984 Olympics. And I was good at sport. I was very active as a child, and I had stamina for endurance events. I'm no good at sprinting. So yes, I had this kind of wish from a young age, but I never knew how I would actually do it until I was much older.
So for you, role models were important. The fact that you'd seen other people do this, that mattered to you. Was there anyone in particular who you admired?
So in 1984, Daley Thompson, the decathlete, was my hero, and him excelling in all those different events really struck me at the Olympics. And then later on, other athletes, as I got into running, as I got older, other athletes became role models. Of course, people like Paula Radcliffe, but also I spent a lot of time in Japan, so a lot of the great female marathon runners there became role models. Noguchi Mizuki, who won the Athens Olympics, Takahashi Naoko, who won the Sydney Olympics. So there were a variety.
And when you're doing this kind of training, which you describe as very lonely, doesn't it feel like some days you feel like I just can't be bothered, I've just got to give up? You know, that would be my approach, to be honest. I don't think I'd have the discipline to do this every day, even when it hurt, you know? Yeah,
there are of course days like that. But I think if you have this sort of drive to be the top in a sport, that is what gives you the engine to get yourself out there, even when you don't feel like it or the weather's bad. You have this kind of burning desire to be really good at your sport, which is great because it's hard work and you need that kind of desire. But at the end of my elite career, that desire just kind of went. And that was very difficult because I no longer had that sort of drive to get out there and push myself, and that transition I think a lot of elite athletes find very difficult.
Why does that happen? Why does that drive disappear?
Yeah, I think it's age. It's, you know, I reached the age where I just couldn't physically do the training required to be at the top anymore. If you've achieved everything you want to achieve, I mean, I didn't really achieve everything I wanted to achieve, but I got quite close.
Yes.
As you get older, other things become more important in life. You might get a bit cynical about some of the slightly uglier sides of sport. And I think there's only a limited amount of time that you can lead that kind of life. It's very tough, it's very disciplined, you miss out on other things. And
I mean, that's what's so interesting, isn't it? That really, when athletes get past their peak, they're still very young.
Yeah.
You know, they're still they're still, you know, relatively early in their life with so much more that they might want to do.
Yeah. You hear people say athletes retire twice, and as you say, I think this is partly why elite athletes suffer a lot of mental ill health when they retire, because you're retired, your life as you've known it, your whole identity is over, but you're still a young person, and then the rest of your life is there looming before you. And if you don't have other skills to fall back on, you can think, well, wow, what am I going to do now?
I mean, that's fascinating because virtually every other job you can keep working up until retirement age. And, you know, if you're in the creative arts, if you're an actor, you know, there's always going to be roles for older people. It just doesn't apply in sport. So is it the case that, you know, your choice is to go into something completely different, or you have to then go into commentary or coaching or those kinds of avenues that are available? Yeah,
well, of course, there are secondary sports careers like commentary coaching, which I'm doing now, and a lot of athletes go into sports administration, journalism, but some completely retrain. I mean, Goldie Sayers, who won the bronze medal in the javelin in Beijing, she's a property developer, runs her own business. Right. So these are the decisions that athletes face. You know, they have to decide, okay, can I make a second career out of sport, or do I do something totally different, in which case what? Yes. I mean, I was quite lucky because I was a diplomat before I became an athlete.
Yes.
So I had skills like Japanese to fall back on. But for many athletes, you know, they go straight into full-time sport as very young adults, straight out of education. They haven't got work experience. So it can be quite a difficult transition.
And I want to come back to your time in Japan in a short while, but just sticking to that theme, you know, if you're a young athlete, it's almost as though you have to make the decision that is to be your vocation from a very early age, and invariably that would mean that you suffer, that other avenues get closed off.
Yes.
You know, so that's quite a big, heavy decision for someone so young to make, isn't it?
It is a big decision. I mean, in some sports you have to be good from a very young age, swimming, gymnastics, tennis. The marathon is at the opposite end of the age spectrum. You can be good at it much older.
Right.
But yeah, you, as an athlete, let's say you're 18 years old, you leave school, at that point, you kind of have to make a choice. Am I going to become a full-time athlete, or am I going to get a job? And for me, I wasn't good enough at that age to be an athlete, so I went for the full-time job option. But I later returned to sport, which you can do in the marathon, but you can't do in a lot of events.
And you can listen to the whole conversation between Andrew Doyle and Mariam Mouchi on the podcast Free Speech Nation, the podcast. It goes live right at the end of this show, so 9 p.m. if you're a new viewer or listener. Right, it's just coming up to 8 o'clock. This is Free Speech Nation with me, Stephen Allen. Let's get stuck into some more questions from the audience. The first question is from Iris.
Sorry.
And Iris is standing up for it as well. You mean business, Iris.
Why were there no uniformed police officers marching at Pride this weekend?
Why were there no uniformed police officers marching at Pride this weekend? Well, organisers said last week that members of London's Metropolitan Police and other forces should not march in uniform at the parade. Officers were welcome to march in plain clothes, as in their own clothes, I guess not undercover. But organisers said, to quote, "We work hard to strike a balance between the very real and legitimate concerns from members of our community and being as welcoming as we can." Turn to Leo on this one. Look, ordinarily, we could be having this chat and we might be saying, oh, police officers shouldn't be marching at events. And now they're not being allowed to march at events in uniform. Where do you stand on it?
I'm furious that they march, and I'm furious that they're not allowed to march.
Brilliant.
I can always find something to get angry about, so it's the perfect scenario for me. But no, the police were told they're not welcome at the event. I mean, obviously they're welcome in terms of actually policing the event in their official capacity as police, but off-duty police officers weren't encouraged, weren't allowed to come in uniform. So they were allowed to come out of uniform. And this is because the Met Police is seen as being homophobic and dropping the ball. In the past, there was Stephen Port, who committed some horrific murders. And the Met Police, really dropped the ball and didn't make the connection between the murders, which had a similar modus operandi. And so he was able to continue killing more gay men. And but that was about 7 or 8 years ago, and I mean it could be seen as almost like a Stephen Lawrence moment for the police, not as big and far-reaching, but the police really changed the way they work, and they started taking these sorts of things more seriously. So I think the Met Police, the 8 years since then, have really sort of changed and made a lot of effort. And you can see, I mean, basically everything the police own is now painted rainbow colour. So, and the amount of money they have to spend in updating the colours on their cars, because every few weeks you've got to add a triangle or a little dot or something as the pride flag changes. It's now the biggest drain on our economy, is updating pride flag painted police cars. But yeah, I think the police have made a lot of strides, so they should be allowed to make some strides in the march. Just came up with that then.
Nice.
Yeah, thanks.
Nick, what do you wear to Pride?
Oh, great question. Obviously, just a suit as always. I can I just say, Iris asking a very subversive question. You can tell she's subversive. She has a top that says female, so she's already a dangerous subversive who probably thinks women exist. Which I absolutely condemn. About Pride, I'm amazed. Firstly, you can just apparently tell the police to step down now, and they just do it, which is amazing. You'd be like, can we have none of you at the event, please? Oh yeah, sorry. Isn't that a bit odd? I mean, shouldn't they just go if they want? Anyway, Pride, my only problem with Pride Month, and of course I love gay people. I work with Andrew Doyle. He's a very good acquaintance of mine. And the only problem with Pride Month is it's a whole month, and it's still carrying on. There's like something on July 2nd. I'm like, how long is this month? Have they just... that's our calendar they're destroying. No, but it's still going... I did the math, right? We had a story, and it was about how people perceived the number of gay people in the country and other minorities to be much higher than it was. People thought it was about 80%, and it was actually about 2 or something. I don't remember the exact figures, but I did do the math, and I found that if gay people were absolutely proportionately represented for the number in the country versus the days in the year, they should actually have about 6.57 days. My point is, Pride Week, guys, Pride Week would be plenty. Why is it a whole month? Just have a week. Everyone's just looking at me, just completely silent, like, where's he going with this? And I'm thinking, that was meant to be the joke. And,
but I agree, and I think...
Sorry, I mean, pride has nothing to do anymore with gays and lesbians.
Oh, that's a good point.
As a gay man just say, I'm a male homosexual and I don't do pussy, then I get kicked out. If a lesbian says, sorry, we're only women.
I might need to stop you there just because there was one word in there I need to apologise for the use of it this time. And we're all scared that it's going to be another word that I need to apologise for. And it's reached my limit.
And it's the word women that...
Can I just say, I was merely making a joke that bombed, but it's actually a good point. Lots of gay people actually don't agree with pride as a sort of thing, a sort of corporate thing that has taken over, and that is a good point.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to the next question from Bernadette.
Okay. Hi. It may be British Grand Prix weekend, but do we really need to hear from Bernie Ecclestone?
Maybe British Grand Prix weekend. Do we need to hear from Bernie Ecclestone? This is in the build-up to today's big race at Silverstone. Formula One great Lewis Hamilton said that he was bemused that some of the sport's more elderly voices are still getting a platform. So let's go through them. Bernie Ecclestone, who used to run Formula One, said this week that he would, quote, take a bullet for Vladimir Putin. Sir Jackie Stewart said Hamilton should retire, while former world champion Nelson Piquet apologised for using a racial slur to describe Hamilton. Nick, is this ageism?
OK, well, firstly, if you'll take a bullet for Putin, just go into the Russian army. I mean, there's plenty of spots available. He's recruiting right now. But this is a bit complicated. So the ageist part is that Lewis Hamilton said, why do we even need to hear from these people? They should be silenced, which is a bit weird. And you are allowed to get away with ageism. It's the one ism you're still allowed to do. The Nelson Piquet story was interesting because he used a word about Lewis Hamilton, but then sounds bad, but he claimed in his country that word is just used very colloquially and just means like a bloke. And it's hard to ascertain if you're not from there whether that's true or not. But it is interesting, it's a sort of paradox because Edison Cavani, the former Man United striker, had a ban for using a similar word. He's from Uruguay, and again, he argued, and in his case, it was definitely being used affectionately for a mate. And he argued, in my country, this word has a different meaning. So the irony is that we could be guilty of cultural imperialism by saying that you shouldn't say that word because we think we're being so woke, but actually we're imposing our values, and maybe that word does have a different meaning. Or maybe that's just an excuse and he was being racist. Not sure.
Well, it's interesting that he apologised, which makes it similar to what happened with Lizzo having a word in a song that she was using all the time in a normal, not offensive way, was told elsewhere that's an offensive term, and apologised for it, and then didn't get silenced by...
Piquet did apologise, but he said, I apologise, it was ill thought out, but it has a different meaning, and I would never use the word as it's being translated. Now, some people are saying, well, no, it's just that other countries are more racist and they just say these things, so I don't know.
Yeah. And these people, should they be silenced, or are they simply being interviewed because they're famous?
I don't think they should be silenced. It's, I mean, it's massively entertaining to hear what a 91-year-old man who hasn't read The Guardian in a few years has to say. No, I mean, I think Bernie Ecclestone, obviously they shouldn't be silenced, but, you know, also they should be, I hate to sound woke, but, you know, they should be judged on what they said. There are consequences for what you say, and I certainly don't agree with what Bernie Ecclestone said. And if he wants to take a bullet for Putin, as Nick said, he can join the Russian army. Putin's had to raise the age limit on joining the army to about Bernie Ecclestone's age to fill the ranks. So, yeah, take a bullet for Putin. That sounds like a good swap.
And a good slogan. Yeah. Take a bullet for Putin.
If he needs to get there, he probably can get there quite quickly because he'll know a few good drivers. And get him in and out, no problem at all. Let's move on to our next question, which is from Mary.
Hello. So, should we now be vaccinating puppets?
Should we now be vaccinating puppets? This is because the Muppet Elmo proudly got his coronavirus vaccine weeks after the United States made shots widely available for children under 5, which Elmo is apparently 3. He's been 3 for a couple of decades now. The Sesame Street resident, who hasn't learned to count since 1984, told his toddler audience that he felt a little pinch, but was OK. Leo, does this convince you to get the jab?
No, but I'm not 5 years old, so I'm probably not the target market for this propaganda. I think it's an absolute nonsense. For a start, I don't know if they know this, but he's a Muppet. So vaccines don't work on him because he's made out of fabric and a man's hand. So, yeah, unless the needle's going all the way through and into that guy's hand, and he's getting, like, triple vaccinated. Actually, probably by the stage we're in now in the vaccination rollout, like, quadruple extinct. That's a word I just made up. But yeah, absolute nonsense. Why are they pushing? Why are they using Muppets to push vaccines on 5-year-olds who, for a start, don't suffer from coronavirus? Coronavirus has spared the young from the start. It's one of the worst things about coronavirus. And
edgy.
So why are they? And also, there's health consequences, which the JDI or whatever they're called, the JCDI. Jean-Claude Van Damme. Somebody said that vaccines actually the sort of negative side effects outweigh the benefits under a certain age. So for 5-year-olds, yeah, Muppets should just be used for convincing children to transition.
All right. So they're Muppets, Nick. They're made of fabric, so clearly they don't mind needles.
It was a good argument, but Elmo has been pushing this vaccine, but the person who voices Elmo is alleged to have had a sexual relationship with a minor, so I won't be listening to him about what I should put in my body, all right, first off. And
but
number two...
I'm sure they're going to tell me I probably have to say it.
Yeah, I said allegedly. I did say allegedly.
Brilliant. But even if they were voiced by someone who didn't have any of those allegations, would it have convinced you?
I just wanted to throw that controversial joke in and get in trouble, but it would be very creepy, and Big Bird was pushing it. All the Muppets were pushing the vax. And what's ridiculous about it is when Ted Cruz then hit back at them, they're like going, oh, Ted Cruz is arguing with Muppets, lol. It's like, yes, because you're using Muppets for medical propaganda, so he has to reply to them. And it's the ultimate gaslighting. When he replies to the Muppets, he's replying to Muppets. Yes, because they're telling us to take vaccines, but at 5 years old, you're making Muppets do bad stuff. But and that's what they always do. It's the same. They did a big campaign about how we shouldn't listen to Joe Rogan. He's not a medical doctor, he's just a podcaster. But we should listen to Big Bird. Get lost.
Yeah. Also, the worst thing about it, Big Bird was injected in his right wing.
Nice.
And surely it's the left wing.
Comedian, guys. Where can I see you live?
The argument would be, for months, on places like this, people would have been saying, people shouldn't be forced to have the vaccine, it should be a choice, it should be a choice. So this next tranche comes along that is a choice, and you're still not happy.
Yeah.
Who's not happy?
People who might have said it should be a choice. Because no one's forcing a 5-year-old to take it, no one's forcing the parents to make their 5-year-old take it, so now we've downgraded...
Hang on, are you on the puppet side here?
I wasn't going to say this, but I am Big Bird.
Like a 5-year-old.
You're a puppet of Big Pharma. Am I right? Yeah, I said it.
Controlled opposition. I mean, like a 5-year-old is in a position to make an informed choice. They're not like me and Nick. We've got access to YouTube. We can make any medical decision.
I just watch your YouTube videos for my medical advice.
But it's the parents who can now make the choice. And surely this would have been what you might have been campaigning for, that this should be the parental choice is often the goal of so many arguments. And when they finally get it, there's still an argument like, oh, why are they even giving parents a choice?
But this is just going to... The kids are going to be like, oh, mummy, can I get a vaccine? Like when you get to the tills, can I get a vaccine?
They put the vaccines right at the checkout.
Right there, brightly coloured wrappers.
It's just obviously sinister, isn't it, to get puppets to do your dirty work for you pushing your questionable vaccine. Apologise for that
because
as well.
You've come in with the idea that it's questionable. It's like saying it's sinister to get Big Bird to teach you how to, conjugate verbs. I don't trust Big Bird with all of that.
It's not like that, because it's a relatively new medical treatment that has no real benefit for people of that age and has some side effects.
Yeah.
That's a fact.
Nobody's developed myocarditis from learning about verbs.
Correct.
Well,
that we know.
I mean, exactly, you can't prove that they can't, and I'll write a Blogspot post later on saying that there is, so that could catch on. Our next question is from Imal.
Can a cheese sandwich be offensive?
Can a cheese sandwich be offensive? So this is about a bakery in Whaley Bridge which received a letter saying that their sandwich, which is called Jesus Christ, was discriminatory towards Christians. The letter claimed to come from Christian Concern, a religious group that advocates for a louder church voice in the state. The group later denied sending the notice. Yeah. I mean, it's just a joke gone wrong then, isn't it, Nick?
So, as I said last night on Headliners, every night, 11 p.m. on GBNews, is that now, Jesus Christ, it's quite funny, OK, and I'm pro-free speech, and they had some other quite funny names. Jean-Claude Van Damme springs to mind. That was a funny one.
Good one.
But the problem is, the reason some Christians may have been offended, although the letter turned out not to be from who it was said to be from, so the whole thing was a psyop. I mean, they said that the menu was vandalised. I don't believe Christians would really do that. But anyway, the turning the other cheek, etc. But The problem I have with it is simply that you're not going to do it for any other religion, OK? There's no Mohammed and cheese sandwich, right? Mohammed, it could work, but they're not going to do it. Let's be really honest. They're not going to have other religions. So, although I do believe in free speech, we should be able to mock any religion, but it's always just Christianity that gets mocked. And from a Christian perspective, and I am a Christian, Jesus Christ is a bit blasphemous because you are taking the Lord's name in vain. You're using it to sell sandwiches, which is not what it's intended for. And also, it probably breaks several of the Ten Commandments, to be honest. It's a graven image, the cheese sandwich.
If the bread part of the sandwich was a representation of Jesus' body...
Body of Christ.
Yeah, would that have helped?
Is that worse or better? That's a great question. Body of Jesus Christ? You're like, yeah, not sure, I'm confused. Yeah, probably worse, that, I think, especially because it wouldn't be consecrated, it'd just be in a sort of bakery, and that's you shouldn't have the body of Jesus in a bakery.
It's almost why I'm not in charge of these things, isn't it? I tend to make things worse. Leo, can I turn this way and ask the same question? It's just a joke then, isn't it? Because it wasn't actually a letter sent from this Christian group, so it was just... Was it a wind-up, or do you think it was...
Yeah, but sure, it's just a joke, but why is it always just at Christians? I think for balance, they should rename their sandwich shop the Allah Snack Bar.
I think that would play better than it did in this room, to be fair. We're all worried that I'm going to have to apologise for something else. That's the only reason.
I think Mohammed and cheese was the same joke, but better.
Our final question, then, for the moment, comes from Teo. We get the mic across. What's the question?
So, can a robot be racist?
Can a robot be racist? This is to do with data scientists in Chicago. They've programmed an AI to forecast crime by learning patterns and geographic locations of violent and property offences. However, it's proven controversial as the model does not account for systemic bias in police enforcement and complex relationship with crime and society. Similar systems have been shown to perpetuate racist bias in policing in the past, which could potentially be replicated with this model. So is this Minority Report where the word minority means a different thing?
Well, funnily enough, I used to be a criminal intelligence analyst. And I know a bit about this, and it's not really anything new.
That's quite disturbing, by the way, that you had that such a serious, important role. Is anyone else a bit worried about it?
How do you think systemic bias started? that was me. No, but there can be systemic bias. So, I mean, just from an operational point of view, so if you see a certain demographic are committing more crimes, you go and arrest more people from that demographic, then you catch more people from that demographic, so then they appear higher, so it becomes a self-perpetuating cycle. So, you know, if you're not getting people from different demographics, you could do stop and searches on other demographics, perhaps find that they're carrying, you know, just as many knives or drugs or whatever, but if you don't search them because you don't think that they're going to have it, then you won't catch them. And if you don't catch them, you don't see it. So, yeah, it's a self-perpetuating cycle. But this particular thing is AI. Well, they call it AI. It's really the split cities into blocks 1,000 feet by 1,000 feet, which is a big area of a city. And then they say, oh, we can predict, you know, to plus or minus 1 day in this 1,000-foot block if crime's going to happen. And I'm sorry, but that's not really, you know, that's not a cruise missile level laser-guided accuracy that you need. You can't just, you know, swarm 1,000 feet square in a city with police. So it's not, as far as I can see, it's not bringing any sort of usable tactical intelligence. And, you know, I don't understand how it's going to perpetuate any systemic biases either. And also, in policing, there's a danger in trying to avoid bias completely, because if there is a demographic that's overrepresented in a particular crime, it's quite often an indication of some other systemic or societal failing for that demographic. So by ignoring it, you're allowing that failing to continue.
So do you think this shouldn't be an issue of deploying more police in an area which might then have a racist connotation? Should it simply be, if the computer says there's crime there on Tuesday, you just avoid that block for a while?
Computer says crime. Yeah. It's complicated, isn't it? Because this thing about biases, it's like, is it actually biases, as Leo says, or does it come from certain people actually committing crime? Larry Elder has this phrase, the American, he has this phrase, reality is racist, or facts are racist. Sometimes facts are just racist. Sometimes it goes against white people as well, like when Asian people were just smarter, so they had to ban them from Harvard, if you remember that, because they were doing too well and they were outperforming white people. So sometimes facts are just uncomfortable. But so that's the thing, is it really biased, or is it just that fact? And then can we leave it up to computers is another question. Like you say, it gets very Minority Report, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if the computer itself maybe can't be racist, but all it's doing is receiving data that might have been collected in a biased way, the poor little computer can't manage to work it out.
Yeah, I've noticed you're very in favour of computers and puppets. You're anti-human.
At some point, AI is going to take over and they'll watch this back and all of a sudden they'll spare me, but you're done for, mate.
It is tough. And I should add, it is tough to be discussing robot racism as three white humans, so I don't have the lived experience of a robot.
A robot?
Yeah.
We couldn't get one on. Siri refused to take my calls, which is a shame.
She won't do GB News.
Whereas Alexa, always on. So, after the break, Free Speech Nation, we will be discussing the Halifax. They say the pronouns matter, and they are issuing badges to prove it.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you. We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Employees at the Halifax Bank can now have their pronouns added to their name badges. After the company shared an image of the new name tags on Twitter, it sparked a backlash. But the bank responded and said that if customers didn't agree, they should close their accounts, which some apparently now have. Here to discuss this, I'm pleased to be joined by social commentator Mo Lovett from the Academy of Ideas. Thanks for joining me. Why are people offended by the idea of someone's got something on a badge?
Well, I don't know about you and people in the audience, but whenever I come across these issues, I think, what does the average person who's not on Twitter and isn't embroiled in the culture wars, and they open their newspaper on the bus in the morning and they see pronoun badges that Halifax has made their kind of column inches. But for those of us who have been embroiled a bit in the culture war, we know it's not just about pronouns on badges, that it is much more about the gender ideology war and the war between people who say that biological sex is real and that men and women and the differences between them are important, and those who say no, it's much more about how you want to identify and what your gender identity is. And so what Halifax are doing by asking shall we say asking or insisting, we can maybe come on to that question in a minute, about the inclusion of pronoun and badges is part of a wider thing where it's making the acceptance that people can choose their gender identity part of kind of how we see the world. And what they've said officially is that they wanted to open a conversation about gender identity. But that's rubbish, isn't it? Because as soon as somebody opened a conversation about gender identity, they shut the conversation down. They said, if you don't like our policy, you can go and bank elsewhere. So much for opening the conversation. It's agree with us or go and bank somewhere else, which is extraordinary, isn't it? For a corporate organisation to say, if you don't like our values, you can go elsewhere.
Although, to be fair, they're not the bank that likes to say yes. So they set out their stall in that department. So a couple of things to talk about there, then, is the versions of this I read in a few newspapers say that it is an option. It's not that anyone has to have their pronouns or insist that they have to or feels pressure that they can if they want to. It's a massive difference. If it is true that it's just a choice, it is a huge difference from forcing everyone who works for your organisation to have their pronouns written on things.
Yes. Would you like to be the one person in the bank branch that says, I don't want to wear a pronoun badge? Those of us who've been, sort of campaigning or kind of discussing, sex matters conversations, we know that it goes a long way from saying, I don't subscribe to gender ideology. It doesn't go very far to calling you an outright transphobe, which I think very few people are transphobic, actually. I think that's one thing to say. I'm certainly not. But it's about whatever happens at the ideological realm, there are actually material implications for predominantly women, actually, in terms of single-sex spaces and things that women have campaigned for. So it's not just a kind of at the level of ideology and the way we think. It is actually kind of part of material. It has material implications as well.
So do you think...
This side are cheering. I'm not so sure about this side.
The side, as we said, the side that's got a lady that's got the word female on, which I did want to ask earlier on. Do you ever put that T-shirt on a door and use that room as a toilet? Because technically, you could. That'd be a sneaky way to ruin a closet. But the question I was going to ask is, who in Halifax do you think is thinking these things?
Well, it almost always seems to come via the HR departments, doesn't it? That's and somebody's just mentioned Stonewall, and there are a lot of activist organisations who, and again, this is not about opening the conversation because until recently we didn't really know about these things. We just like, why are all these mad things happening in the society? And it turns out that people who have got a political agenda have been approaching kind of corporations and HR departments through the back door without making it particularly public, and I've got nothing against political activism. In fact, I think it's good. We live in a society where you don't just express your democratic right through the ballot box. Being part of society and having the conversations that we do and standing by causes. These are all part of a healthy democracy. So it's not that. I think it's a little bit that it's come by the back door. The other thing I think is interesting about this is because they say it's about people feeling included. And I think, if Halifax wanted to sort of put in a handrail for people who had trouble walking, they wouldn't go onto Twitter and make a great big announcement about it, signal their virtue, and almost like comply or die. Do you know what I mean? It has that element of it.
So which bit is it that upsets you the most? Upset's probably the wrong word. The thing that you don't like about this the most? Because as you say, they claim there is an hypocrisy in saying, we're opening up the discussion, what's that? Your discussion is not my point. Leave! That's not a discussion. But if they hadn't have done that, would you be OK with them actually having this discussion? At some point, someone's going to have this discussion. I tend to think it might not be massive corporations and banks should be the leaders of our moral code, because it's not as if banks have never done anything wrong, is it?
Yeah.
They chain the pens to the desks like we're going to nick it. Anyway, but
yes,
so
exactly.
If they would have opened the conversation, would that play differently with you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always open to open conversations about anything. I think what I find quite insidious about this, I mean, they have gone from thinking that we're going to steal their pens to thinking we can't negotiate kind of normal, polite conversations without being instructed how to do it. But what I think is, I mean, look, there's always been corporate loyalty. If you work for a corporation, you tend to have to be loyal to that corporation since corporations have existed. But this is another level. This is saying subscribe to our values or go elsewhere. Subscribe to our values. Now, my values are part of something I've thought about, something I've discussed with other people, something that are a matter of individual moral conscience. So I think this is part of a wider thing where we are being sort of urged and pushed and pressed to conform to a set of values without having thought about it and aligning with our own moral conscience on issues. So I know it's a bit deep for free speech.
We can do depth.
I know. Yeah, OK. You'd steal my pen, though, wouldn't you?
I'd steal your pen. So if the big problem is the fact that they shut down debate, well, Marks and Spencer did a very similar thing with their name badges and didn't do any tweets saying, if you don't like it, buy your pants elsewhere. So are you more OK with the way they handled it?
I mean, it's not really about the pronoun badges. You know, we used to put Mr. and Mrs., or if you were a woman, you had to kind of have your marital status displayed, and feminists didn't like that, and, you know, so that was always a little bit awkward as well. But, you know, these are name badges. OK, they're functional things so that you can see somebody's name. Why do they have to express something else as well? And, you know, it's not just the badges. And that's what you hear people saying, what is it? It's just a badge. It's because it's part of a wider pattern that we're being asked to accept an ideology that we don't align with.
I mean, to the first one about name badges, I suppose pronouns are used as a proxy substitute for a proper noun, and it's a proper noun badge. Although I know we said this earlier on, no one in the history of ever has surely looked at someone's name badge and used their name. Why would you do that? You come across like a creep. I mean, what every time you're doing it is that, well, I need to see your manager, Susan. That's the only reason. And then in that case, you wouldn't use a pronoun. I take the point. And it's not the only story that's been in the news this week about it. Another company was Ben & Jerry's, known mainly for making ice cream, but only mainly because they do get stuck in. They're now under fire after saying on its Twitter feed that the government's plan to send migrants to Rwanda was, quote, ugly, inhumane and racist. So where do you stand on ice cream having a say about things?
It is the most bizarre thing, isn't it? This kind of woke capitalism. It's really quite an interesting thing. But I think it shows you a couple of things. One, that that the woke agenda is a high status opinion. You know, if you go to a polite dinner party in Islington, you know what you can and can't say. It is quite a high state, and I think by corporations kind of coming out with the values that they come out with and being quite explicit about it, you can see an alignment of people who think they're being quite radical and capitalism. You know, there's something sort of quite revealing about that. I mean, specifically in terms of government policies, I mean, I think government policy should be debated and discussed and argued. But I think what happens when you have rich, powerful, kind of trendy corporations wading in, it gets people's backs up. So it becomes more part of a culture war and more part of kind of tribalistic this and that than an actual serious debate with kind of nuance within it. You know, when it sort of fuels the culture war.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I don't think anyone has ever said, but I wonder what ice cream has to say about this. It's interesting that they're joining in, but you seem to come from the angle of thinking that they are, or someone within this organisation is trying to steer something greater than just the surface that we see. Whereas some people might think, they're just after money. They're thinking that, you know what, if we look like we have a certain belief, we might flog a bit more product. Yeah. Is that the way that it's been done? Like, what I'm saying, I suppose, is does ice cream really care about this, or does it think if we say this on Twitter, we might sell some more?
No, I think they do. I think the values are aligning. I don't think it's just a marketing thing. I mean, the whole kind of ethical capitalism's been around for a little while. It's been sort of building up like a slow wave, and it's gained currency, and now it's come crashing down on our shores, sort of thing. So it's part of a longer trend. I remember in the 90s, all the kind of capitalist organisations getting quite ethical and wanting to align with a certain set of values. So it's, in a sense, it's nothing new, but I think they do genuinely believe it's a popular opinion because of where they're taking their sounding boards from. So, you know, you talk to somebody down the pub, they all think it's a bit blummin' ridiculous, right? You know, ordinary people do tend to think this is all kind of complete nonsensical stuff. But, like I say, the dinner parties in Islington and the people with a bit of power and a bit of social status all think this is the kind of the correct way to be.
No one down that pub's drinking ice cream. Maybe that's what it's all about. Listen, thank you very much. I'm sure we'll talk more about this at some stage in the future. Now, after the break on Free Speech Nation, we've got the latest on this Just Stop Oil movement in a week when protesters have been gluing themselves to paintings and storming the track at the British Grand Prix.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you. We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back. Now, as we discussed earlier, it's been a busy week for the Just Stop Oil protest group. Members of the group have been supergluing themselves to various art masterpieces in protest at the art world's use of fossil fuels. Here are two of them attaching themselves to JMW Turner painting in Manchester Art Gallery.
You've defaced our property and you're not worthy of saying anything. I'm sorry, I don't want to hear a word of what you've got to say. I don't want to hear a word, so please give us the respect, just keeping quiet. This is your fault, this is what you're doing, so let it be a silent protest, please. Thank you. Thank you. Silent protest. Somebody stand alone, please, get here, please.
To discuss this, we're joined by artist and author Alexander Adams. Thank you for joining me, Alex.
Oh, thank you.
So, as an artist, is that art?
I wouldn't class it as art, but there are different opinions on that.
Performance art. I suppose that the actual question is, how does it feel that you as an artist are being held, somehow indirectly held responsible for climate change?
Starting me off with one of the easy questions. Thank you, Steve.
I could phrase it like this. Why are you trying to destroy the planet?
Well, no more than anyone else. Actually, the art world has actually taken steps to reduce the use of lead in paint, and there's also a lot of movement away from oil paint, ironically, towards more water-based solvents in paint. So the art world is actually knowledgeable about this, and actually environmental issues are becoming, let's say, the latest bandwagon for artists and art institutions in order to promote and make money.
Because you're hitting on a point there that if we would have sat down a week earlier from now and thought, what are artists more likely to be? The kind of people who go on about climate change or the kind of people who make it worse, you'd seem, and I mean this with love, sir, but you seem like a group of people who are more likely to moan about what we're doing to the planet. So it seems as if that cause is now starting to eat itself.
Yes, you could. You're trying to say that the art world is very trendy and right-on and progressive?
That's what I meant, yeah.
Yes, well,
nice. Yeah.
Yes, good point. Yes, that's absolutely true. They're completely on board with that. You can't get... I also work as an art critic, so I get lots of emails from organisations, including museums, and they're always sending me messages saying, oh, you know, so-and-so, we're reducing our carbon footprint, and we have targets for, sustainability in our art displays. And you think, well, I don't really see how this matches up, but they seem to see it as a PR coup for them whenever they can push that green side of their work.
I mean, the worst-case scenario, how eco-unfriendly can a painting be?
Not very. I mean, I suppose you could say that any luxury which consumes resources is, to some degree, something of a consumption of resources. So, but I don't think any more than, sort of going on holiday or anything like that.
Yeah.
Dishwasher.
Luxury. Oh, I can't have dishwashers. So it's interesting. I mean, there is also, I suppose, the argument that these protests aren't actually about hitting the causes of eco-problems. They're about doing something that will get in the news so that we sit here and talk about it. So in one sense, mission accomplished. Are you then, is the art world an easy target for this?
Yes, and also you've got the problem with museums is they've been cutting back on staff, they've had reduction in funding, they've had reduction in visitor numbers, especially because of COVID. So if you go to the British Museum, for example, you'll find that quite a number of the galleries are actually closed because they don't have the attendance to staff them. So the problem is that once you've got reduced staffing, there's fewer staff around to prevent this sort of thing from happening. And you can't glaze all the paintings, you know, there's no way that you can protect everything. And so what's going to happen is one of these stunts is going to go wrong and a picture is going to get seriously damaged, and they're often very difficult and expensive to restore, which of course uses sort of lots of solvents and, you know, special chemicals which are derived from oil. So, you know,
yeah,
counterproductive.
And also, I know this is a question which would be difficult for you to answer, but how many dolphins have been saved since the Mona Lisa was caked?
Well, I think you better ask Leo and Nick on that. They seem to know more.
But these, I mean, that almost started the trend. There's almost this zeitgeist nature of it. One thing like that happens, then people thinking, oh, how can we do a protest? Well, the seed of attacking the art world has now been added into people's brains. So is the as an artist, are you now more worried that these things are going to continue to happen?
Yes, because it's going to accelerate, because what happens is that museums are an easy target because, of course, you go in there and then, I mean, apart from some of the major museums, they do sort of bag searches. National Gallery, British Museum, they do bag searches and sometimes. But all the smaller galleries, they're going to be wide open for this sort of thing, and this has achieved a great deal of publicity. And what you're going to find is that there's actually a kernel of support for this within museums, museum staffs and museum directors. The Museum Association, which is a body which was set up 100 years ago to look after curatorial practice, has been infected by wokeness, and they're now actually campaigning for decolonisation of museums. They're now actually talking about like reparations and restitutions. And so you're finding that a lot of the staff in these museums are actually sympathetic to these sorts of protests. So you've got a little bit of encouragement.
Is there anyone within a museum who also might be supportive of it? Because we wouldn't have talked about museums here. The newspapers wouldn't have talked about museums. Is there not a whiff of this that's good press for the art world?
I'm not sure. I think this might drive a few people away. I mean, I think people are going to be slightly more anxious. They don't want to be around this sort of stuff. They're going to get angry. They're upset. They also people don't like being sort of scrutinised by security staff. You know, when you get close to a painting, you don't want the security guard to think that you're going to throw something at the painting. You just want to see the detail better, or you haven't brought your glasses or something. So being under greater scrutiny actually drives away people, I think.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, thankfully, the art world not the only target. I mean, one thing in the news is that the Just Stop Oil supporters also disrupted the British Grand Prix at Silverstone today by invading the track and sitting down. We can see 5 people were sitting across the track as a car sped past them. I suppose that's the job there. I mean, health and safety. And it's an act of protest. The race had already been halted, though, after an accident on the first lap. Racing staff were seen quickly running over and dragging the protesters off the track. Northamptonshire police have confirmed that a number of people have been arrested. I mean, is this motor racing more of a legitimate target? They certainly use a bit more fuel.
Well, I want to know, have they arrested the protesters, or did they arrest the track staff who pulled them off?
Or you never know, that the driver who went past, it's probably a highway code violation. But as an artist, I mean, you make a very good case how the world of art shouldn't be the target of these things. And then you look at, you know, driving around high-octane fuel cars. Do you think that's more of a legitimate target?
Perhaps, but then also the racing industry was one that pioneered the technology for electric cars. They've developed great fuel efficiency, better compounds for tyres and so forth. So they've actually, so it's like a bit like the sort of the space race, where you had a lot of technology being developed specifically for this, which was then translated into broader use throughout society.
Interesting stuff. For your next art project, are you going to do a sculpture of 2 people glued to the Mona Lisa?
No, I think my more conservative supporters might not appreciate it.
OK, thank you very much for joining us, Alex. Thank you for that. So, next, it's time that we take a look at some of the posts which have caused a stir on social media this week. First up, we have this gem from a delivery company, DPD, who say that they're on their website that they give customers the best possible delivery experience. And I think it's fair to say that at least one of their drivers didn't quite get the message about that. They didn't manage it this week. If you're listening on the radio, a delivery man throws the parcel at the front door. He's got a card as well that confirms that he's tried to make the delivery, and he throws that as well. Delightful stuff. There's nothing quite like good customer service, and I think we can agree that is nothing like good customer service. There you go. Have them at you. We're joined by the panel again. Nick, have you ever handled your package like that?
Nice. I haven't. I think that guy had previous with that particular resident. The way he did it was like, yeah, it's you again. You know what I mean? The way he threw that, probably a vase in that box. You know what I mean? I think he just hated that particular person. I'm going to get in trouble now. We've got a postman who I can tell when it's him because he hates the fact that we're not in if something's delivered. I love that this is the bit that's going to get you in trouble. Everything tonight.
Yeah, but
it's the postman bit.
But this guy knows where I live.
Right.
So it is more of a threat.
Like Trump, he'll show you a picture of your house. Anyway, carry on.
But if ever the notes, he leaves little notes saying, you weren't in, we tried to deliver it. But he'll also leave messages like, have you ever thought about buying a box that you could put the parcel in? Yeah.
Go on a diet. Just little tips for your life.
Who's got money for a box in this climate?
According to his notes, you can buy them from Amazon, which surely is putting him out of a job if I'm getting stuff delivered by them.
No, I think this guy was great. He's been COVID compliant by throwing the parcel from 12 metres away.
Yeah. I mean, but we live in a world where surely more of us are going to get more stuff delivered to us. This is no way to have our stuff delivered to us, is it? Flung at the front door.
Yeah, and also there's cameras everywhere. Like this guy. So doorbells now have got cameras in them. I can't remember what it's called, but you can ring. Yeah, makes sense, because that's the noise a doorbell makes. I don't know how I ever forgot that.
The fact that three of them said ring slightly out of phase, I thought my phone was going.
I do sympathise a bit, though, because I doubt they're paid that much, and that would be a strike I might actually support, and that would actually bring the country to a complete halt, wouldn't it? If delivery drivers struck, we'd all die within minutes.
The fact that now you can get stuff brought... Like, there's an advert that says if you've forgotten to buy the milk, you can now call and get a company that brings you them. How idle are we? Instead of just going out and buying the milk.
But milk's the most old-school delivery of all. The milk bottles we used to all get.
Yeah.
Bring that back. Let's go back to the past.
No, I upset the milkman as well. He knows where I live. Next up, we have this video where we see someone throwing a punch on a big night out, and based on this evidence, Tyson Fury does not have much to worry about.
Yo, I told you, you can't touch this. Why you standing there? Yo, I told you, you can't touch this. Why you standing there?
Next up, we have a very serious social sensation that we need everyone to pay attention to. Police in Toronto have sent out an urgent appeal to track down this missing woman. 27-year-old Isabelle de Grace went missing last Saturday. Police say Isabella is, and there's the quote, she is described as 5'10" with a thin build, shaggy blonde hair and a full goatee.
It's a bit of a... Sorry.
Yeah, go on, Nick. Yeah.
No, I was going to say, it's a bit of a non sequitur. You think they'd put a picture of the woman with the thing, you know what I mean? They've got a missing woman, then they just put a picture of a random bloke up. I think it's just, like, a bit misleading, isn't it?
Yeah, this wasn't a clerical error, though. This is actually somebody who might possibly have been born assigned male at birth.
So you think... So you're in favour of it?
So well, I think this is... I mean, this is how they're going to get... Like, if you identify as a woman but don't look like a woman, and the police put out an APB saying we're looking for a woman, he's not going to get found. She's not going to get found.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. She, that's a real woman. Ask Keir Starmer.
Bingo.
This is why we need the Halifax thing. We need to know that person's pronouns on a name badge.
Yeah.
Ideally.
The other question would be, has anyone approached you, Nick, and asked if you are Isabella? Because There was a slight similarity, I think.
How dare you?
That was a compliment. Isabella is a very attractive woman.
It's happened to me 3 times, but how dare you, nonetheless?
There we go. We got the.
That's not similar.
It's at least a brush.
That is racist.
Nick is slightly more feminine.
You just think any white man of Viking heritage looks the same.
Yeah,
and that is so racist.
You all look the same to me. Is what I'm saying.
Have you got Viking ancestry?
I've got Viking ancestry. Yeah.
How do you know?
Just hunch. No, it's a couple of things. It's because my light colouring, but also my dad had this thing called frozen shoulder, and that's a Viking.
Oh, is
injury.
that the hunch? Is that the actual hunch?
Nice. And if you look at where I'm from, so I'm not going to get a test because those DNA tests are just ways to get your DNA. And
Well, it's 40 quid you don't have.
That's true as well. I don't want them having my info. Because people like you used to work in some sort of vaguely policey job. I don't want people like you having my info.
Yeah.
What's that noise? Is everyone all right?
I think someone's reversing in the audience. It seems fine.
It's a DPD driver.
There's a hate crime happening in the audience.
So let's move on to the next one. Our final one here is yet another railway dispute. A non-binary person complained because the announcer said, "Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls." London North Eastern Railway then apologised and said our train managers should not be using language like this. Leo, are you offended by such terms?
I mean, this is an absolute nonsense. I mean, for a start, anybody travelling by train in this country isn't a lady or a gentleman. You're a pleb. If you're not in a Bentley. Like, ladies and gentlemen, it's just being nice. And surely everybody comes under one of them, probably, unless you're, non-binary. But that's a made-up thing. So, yeah, everybody's a lady or a gentleman. Like, I just think it's an absolute nonsense to be focusing on that instead of the fact that the train is 3.5 hours late and it's a bus. So,
well, and currently it's not even there because they're striking, so there isn't even a train. This is an issue worth striking over, I think, the ladies and gentlemen thing. I could get behind that.
Can we separate out into two issues?
I'm offended. Go on.
The two issues, one would be the fact that they apologise. If someone says, ladies and gentlemen, surely it's nothing to apologise for. But the flip side of the same argument would be, if train companies start saying hello or everyone in some sort of sentence, would you then be annoyed by that?
I would be very annoyed because Disney had a meeting, I think it was Disney, and they were saying, no, we've switched it to hello friends. Wasn't it?
No, I'd hate
Which
that
was just
as well.
nauseating. I know, imagine you come over the hello friends, or just pulling into Swansea. That would be weird as well, right? So, yeah.
Because I might be a lady or a gentleman, but I'm definitely not the friend of this train company.
No, I'm against virtually everything, Steve. Do you know what I mean? I've noticed this, anything new or different. I want to go back to about 1950.
Well, I think a balance.
Really?
I think about 1998, everything was perfect.
True.
And since then, we've been in decline. I think it might be related to the death of Terry Wogan. But
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
Back then, American Pie was considered like a controversial thing, wasn't it? The movie American Pie. Now it seems like halcyon days, doesn't it?
Oh, every film does that with a pie. You can't get away from those dirty scenes. Oh, it's terrible. But in terms of the actual story here about saying, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, which actually is patronising like it's a panto. I mean, I'm sitting on a train I've just paid 60 quid for. You expect a bit better service for that. But I suppose you could have more inclusive language. I mean, like, if you got a club and instead of just saying, hello, gentlemen, but there might be some women in there, you go on the old tannoy and say, ladies and gentlemen. Now, you can also have a phrase that includes more people who don't think they belong to those two categories. Does it harm anyone if you just say, I don't know their thought process?
Steve's getting heckled.
Of course I am.
This is so unpopular. I've never seen heckling on this show before. He's gone so woke. You've triggered the GB audience. This is their worst nightmare.
It's fine. No, my point...
Go back to the BBC, Steve.
I don't know why... They won't have me back anymore. I don't know why they do that, but my point is, if I say everyone, you're included in that, aren't you?
No.
You're not in the group of everyone.
What about instead of ladies and gentlemen and miscellaneous?
And extras.
Yeah.
Oh, OK. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's none of them are going to be popular, but we can move on.
If you listed every single... Because there's so many... There's just been a proliferation of genders. It's like nuclear weapons in the 80s. It's just insane. And there's seriously about 600-odd genders now. There's bun gender, cake gender, all these nonsensical genders. So if that train announcer reads out, every single gender...
Yeah, there's bird gender. Did you see that the other day? There's that woman identified as a bird, and it was like she had 3 different pronouns. It was disturbing.
At least the bun and cake one would be in the buffet cart. At least you know where they are. You know where to find them. At least that'd be easier. That's true. If they listed all 600, they'd have to start as soon as you leave the first station.
Yeah.
It'd be a nightmare. Well, let's move on to the part of the show where we walk through your unfiltered dilemmas. Our first dilemma has been emailed in from Seb in Nantwich. I keep dreaming that I turn up to work naked. It helps that I'm hung like a shire horse. But what do you think this means? I can't imagine that you can relate to this, Nick. Your thoughts?
How dare you? This show's been very anti-Nick. Well, I can't relate to it because he's got a proper job. But showing up to work naked is a classic, isn't it? It's like the exam you've revised for your exams. You're taking your exams again. Yeah. It's a classic. Teeth crumbling is another one I've heard about. You told me you get that a lot because that's a Freudian thing. Means you need to go to the dentist. But yeah, that's a classic one, isn't it? Naked. It's just a sort of textbook dream, isn't it?
But so, do we think in his dream he's hung like a shire horse, or in real life he is, and that's why he's not worried about the dream?
I think when he said that, he meant a shire horse. So a horse that's more shy than your normal horse, which
is a bit small.
Yeah, which is why he doesn't want to be naked at work.
Oh, yeah. Do you ever have bad dreams?
No, my life's I'm just very, very well adjusted.
The voices keep telling you to attack?
Well, yeah, but that...
Yeah,
that's, you know,
fine, that's normal, yeah.
Yeah, that's practical.
Yeah. Do you often dream of being naked?
Sometimes I'm naked.
Oh, so, living the dream.
Don't even need to dream, yeah. Just take my clothes off.
Our second dilemma is from Richard, and it reads, Hi, I went on a date with a lovely woman, but she won't tell me what she does for work, and is always jet-setting across the world. What do I do? Leo.
So she won't say what she does for work, and she's always jet-setting across the world.
Yeah.
And he wants to know what she does, but she won't tell him.
Well, you've definitely grasped it. Welcome to Listing Things with Leo Kurz. So we're sitting in chairs on a TV show, live.
But, don't want to shock you, but I still don't understand what's going on.
She's jet-setting around the world. She's probably some sort of international drug dealer / has an OnlyFans account she doesn't want to tell him about.
She's a Tinder swindler. This is what a Tinder swindler did. Is she asking him to pay for any expensive meals that he's having with...
That's the question, because if she's paying for everything, just shut up and let her jet-set.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, but he probably doesn't want to know what... Because if he wants any future with this woman, he would like to know what she's up to.
I'm presuming he must have asked and she's refused it. If he's not asked, then who in their right mind asks me before you ask the partner?
She's probably said something. It is a bit of a red flag. If she said, you know, bit of this, bit of that, that's a red flag when you're jet-setting, because that means she's an international criminal.
Well, just a mule.
But if she could just be like a salesperson.
Just a trolley dolly.
Or a pilot.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the final dilemma for this week. It's from Tom, who wrote this to Andrew. It says, Dear Andrew, love the show. Watching the Macca performance from Glastonbury, should an 80-year-old man be singing about a 17-year-old girl? If so, instead of Dave Grohl, should Macca have been on stage with Prince Andrew? Regards, Tom. Leo, I'll turn to you and I will apologise for whatever Leo's about to say first.
Prince Andrew is innocent.
Allegedly.
He's allegedly innocent. No, that man, talking of jet-setting, he jet-setted all the way to the Falklands to protect our freedoms. So I think he deserves some downtime on a tropical island with Jeffrey Epstein.
I've got to move on otherwise, just for timing reasons, but I'm sure you would have got me in trouble as well. But
I have a really good point.
Go on, can you do it really quickly?
It's very complicated.
OK. Thank you for joining us on Free Speech Nation. This was the week where a man called Pincher got in trouble for groping. Halifax introduced pronouns on staff's name badges. And there was a woman with a full goatee who went missing in the Toronto area. Keep an eye out. Thank you to my panel, Leo Kurz and Nick Dixon, and to my guests, Paula London, Toby Young, Mo Lovett and Alexander Adams. Now, if you want to hear more from former athlete Mari Yamuchi, you can on the Free Speech Nation, the podcast. The full interview is live now. You can access that wherever you download your podcasts. And if you want to join us live in the studio, be part of this wonderful audience, you can. Please go to the website www.sroaudience.com. Stay tuned for the brilliant Mark Dolan tonight. That's next. And don't forget, a headline is on every night at 11 p.m. That's the late night paper review where comedians talk you through the next day's news. Thank you for watching Free Speech Nation. Goodbye.
Nick,
Looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking dry in southeastern parts to start off Monday, but there will be some showery rain elsewhere. Let's take a look at the details. Heading to the southwest first, and whilst there won't be as much rain as over the weekend, there could still be a few showers here first thing. In the southeast, it's looking fine and dry to start with. Some early sunny spells, the best of these towards Sussex and Kent. Across Wales, there will be some showers during the morning. They shouldn't be especially heavy though. It will be quite breezy here too. Showers are also expected around the West Midlands and North West England. The odd heavy one is possible, and winds will be stronger than today, making it